Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker, and if you are the kind of person who has thought in the past green teas are too bitter, too bland, I think we have a tea today that will change your attitude. This is a tea that's probably unique or newer for a lot of people. It generally has lower levels of astringency and less of that bitterness. So this may be a new way or a new taste experience for many of us. So I hope you can stick around, follow the tasting all the way through to get the full experience of the tea, because we're going to be looking at the tea, in particular this green tea. So let's go ahead and start this tea. Like I said, this is going to be a tea you want to kind of get the full experience of what it's like in the dry leaf, the wet leaf, and the liquor, because those aspects will help you in understanding, appreciating, and even buying teas in the future. This is a ChinaChaDao is the name of this tea. I'm going to be getting out my spoonful here, putting into my gaiwan. Now that's a very shallow, flat teaspoon, and that's not really covering the bottom of my gaiwan. This is what this bowl is called, a gaiwan, which in Chinese is basically a literal translation, or literally translated as covered bowl, lidded bowl. So I'm sprinkling in enough to really cover the bottom of my gaiwan, and it's just enough so that you really don't see the bottom surface. Then just maybe toss in another pinch more of that, and that should be more than enough. Now the second part, of course, is adding our water, and our water's been brought close to a boil, not really a full rolling boil, but it's going to be enough to put some heat on this without overcooking it. That's an issue, over steeping it. Sometimes water if it's too heavily boiled, cooks the leaves. So we're doing okay with that. In this particular case, when we're tasting teas together here, I usually use water that's a little bit hotter, simply because I want to draw out both the strengths and the weaknesses of the tea. If the tea is a lower quality, generally compared to other teas of the same kind, it has more astringency if it's a lower quality. So we do want to kind of pull that out to see what this tea has to offer. So now I've also, you notice, brought enough water so that a little bit of water sticks up above the rim of my bowl, and that creates a nice watertight seal there. So that gives us a nice environment for steeping that tea in. Now while that's steeping, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this leaf here. We have, as we said, this is actually from ChinaChaDao is the company. It's an eBay company. You'll find them on eBay. Because they're based in China. I like to find good deals from companies like this because they are close to origin. A Chinese company or a Chinese-owned company is often, not always, but often more familiar and more experienced with sourcing, interacting with tea vendors, and being able to appreciate or know what to expect, what to really find from a tea. Of course, there are excellent teas and tea companies here in the U.S. as well who have gained that experience through years of work in the tea industry. But as we said, ChinaChaDao PremLiuAnGuaPian, or you may hear Luanguapian. Liuan is a city, town area in Anhui province of China. Guapian is melon seed or melon piece, I could say, melon seed, yeah. There are several different variations of the idea, but the concept is that this particular tea has a melon seed shape. This tea, or you can find 100 grams for $15.99, $16. So that's what we have. I'm keeping an eye on our tea here. I'm actually going to break that lid. That looks actually pretty good. You know what? I am going to pour that now, because if you're at home and you're following these instructions and you wait too much longer, your tea is going to get over steeped. So let's go ahead and pour this, and then we'll be able to talk a little bit more. I'm angling my lid over to the side, middle finger and thumb holding the edges here. And we're going to pour quickly, getting a few leaves in the pitcher. That's fine. I'm going to pour slowly enough. They're really going to stay in the pitcher part anyway, so that's not a big deal. Kind of nice to look at to see the leaves floating around in there, so that works out just fine. Now, before that gets too cool, we want to do a quick examination of the dry leaf here. And get one more smell, because this one does have some of those characteristic green tea type of smells. There is a little bit of asparagus in there. On the other hand, there is something that is coming out as a little bit of that I find more associated with some Japanese greens. There's a little bit of a lemon zest type aspect. There's a bit of like a spinach aspect in here as well. Something hit me. So there's a light metallic kind of smell as well coming off of this, but very faint, very light. Looking at these leaves, this is where you're going to notice the big difference between this and many other kinds of green tea. Leaf portions are larger. These are actually larger leaves. You're not going to see tips or buds in here very often, and you will not usually see a full-size leaf. I mean, from stem to very pointed tip of the leaf, but most of the leaf, and it's kind of rolled like a piece of scroll or parchment there, rolled up. Your colors are going to be a deep green, a little bit of a bluish green, depending on how much time it's spent under or around a heat source. There could be a little bit of a grayish tinge, a blue-gray, kind of a slate-gray kind of aspect to this green, and that's what we're seeing as well. Not a lot of sheen here, and when I say large portions, you're seeing pieces that are an inch or so, inch to inch and a half in length, sometimes even longer. Here's one that's, for example, longer than that. But that gives us an overview of what our leaves look like. Usually we tend towards brighter. I don't necessarily look for hear people looking for smaller is better for LiuAnGuaPian, but you do want something that is, but smaller in the sense of being more delicate is more valued. Okay, let's go on to our wet leaf. An additional note to that: when I say more delicate, you do want a leaf that is more finer in nature, a little bit thinner. Sometimes smaller in size was often related to that. But let's go to our wet leaf now. Toasted notes. You can tell that this was put under, and my guess is going to be something like basket firing, or a reproduction of basket firing. There's going to be a heat source. A basket firing, traditionally, you have a column made of bamboo, and this tube or cylinder is maybe 3 feet or so in diameter. Diameter. It's going to be woven bamboo. On top of that, you have a cone-shaped area, also like a round cone all the way around. Comes to a point and then with a wide brim of a hat, actually, and so the sides curls back out. So you've got imagine a very large hat, again about 3 feet. The edges, the brim curves downward slightly, flattens out, and then comes up to a point. That's the kind of shape, and by alternately placing that on that low heat that's down in the base of that bamboo cone. Oftentimes there's a coal, traditionally there was a coal fire there, but that slow heat, not enough to burn the basket, enough to dry out those leaves, removing it, putting it back on, removing, putting it back on. That process is actually part of the firing or heating process of this leaf. And that's what That's what you can kind of smell. It's a little bit of, some people will say it's nutty. I'm not getting as much nutty as more of a kind of a cooked green bean type of smell. A little bit of cooked spinach in there as well. And this is where we're talking about those size of those leaves. Here you've got a nice leaf. This one you can actually see most of the tip there. Good, you know, around 2 inches in length. About 3/4 of an inch wide. So these are good sized leaves. Very tender, very fairly flexible. Actually, they got quite a bit of resiliency to them. There's a lot of give there. This took me, you know, quite a bit of stress to really kind of push on this to get that to tear. So that's this is a fairly resilient leaf. Not the most delicate, not the most tender. Let's see, this one as well. Okay. Again, nice bright colors here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that one on here on our lid for observation. And then you're getting portions as well. And these portions are a little bit, here's a portion that's a little bit lighter yellow in color. Not a full leaf. I believe we could get more, I think we could find more tender, something a little more tender, a little bit less resilient in some higher quality PremLiuAnGuaPians. But let's move on and just really get to the tasting aspect, the liquor aspect. Because when we do, we see a fairly bright, I mean there's a good clear bright yellow color coming off of this. Less of the green. It's not really dull, not too dull at least, I'll say it that way. It's got a bit of a cloudiness to it. It's not fully transparent as I look through the liquor here. So there's a thickness in the appearance of the liquor there. Okay, let's give it a try. Not a lot of aroma coming off yet. A little bit of spinach there, I detect. A little bit of a metallic type of seaweed smell I often get off of Japanese greens. Okay, let's give it a try though. Spinachy. So it's favoring over towards something that's like a Japanese green tea. There's some of those kind of properties, elements present here. So there's a bit of that spinach. There's a little bit of that metallic type of aspect. So that it does give the feel of I don't know, almost like you're sucking on a quarter. There's that kind of metallic bite there. On the other hand, there's a bit of astringency that hits at the front, and as you're tasting the tea, as you're rolling it around in your mouth, you get this astringent feel. But in the aftertaste, that fades away quite quickly. You're left with this kind of sweet, juicy green. Imagine the freshest, sweetest green peas you've ever had. It's that kind of sweetness there. It's not overly vegetal to the point of, you know, you've eaten too many green peas, but it's just that freshest, sweetest aspect of them without all the other components of that. So with that, it does feel sweet. It feels almost cooling, refreshing. As far as the texture goes, I feel more of a texture again in the back, in the aftertaste, especially towards the mouth and the back of the, the top back of the throat there. It just feels like there's something heavy. There's a coating that's still sitting on there. So that's a positive aspect. So looking at this tea as a whole, I know we did look at ChinaChaDao's previous teas on the Supreme a few months ago. This one, of course, is not as high as that. We give this one. I give this one a 80. I'd probably give this one an 88. Lots of good properties. A little bit more metallic, a little bit unbalanced in that vegetal aspect. So come back and join us at Walker Tea Review, where we're going to explore, open our doors, open our minds, open our taste buds to new and different taste experiences.